Mr. Donut, and they're also very, very popular in Japan. And you guys already know that I love all things QQ. And these donuts are super chewy. They have a very mochi-like texture, and they're actually a little bit different from the mochi donuts we have here. These donuts are actually made with tapioca flour, which, as some of you might know, is also the same flour that we use to make boba. So it's like a boba donut. So it's like a boba mochi donut, essentially. The recipe I'm following this time is from Just One Cookbook. She did a lot of research to find out what ingredients to use and what ratio of what to what in order to achieve that classic texture. Big shout out to her because this process does not seem easy at all. You can see here that the dough is already getting really, really sticky, which is not what you would usually expect for when you're making donuts. I was just fascinated with this dough because look at how stretchy that is. It was insane. It being sticky meant that it was definitely not that easy to handle. I had to remember to oil the sides of the bowl. I just covered it with a warm towel and popped it in the oven, not turned on, of course, with a bowl of warm water, and let that do its thing. There's a lot of ways to enjoy this donut, but I decided to go with a matcha frosting and also a dalgona candy frosting, which you'll see later. But for the matcha frosting, I was definitely very, very generous with my matcha powder. I like it when it's almost a little more bitter. I like it when it's a super vibrant, almost like darker green. After the dough is rested, it almost like tripled in size. And I should not have touched it at this point. You can see that it's super, super sticky. I definitely had to flour my surface. But it was also important to not add too much flour, otherwise the texture would change. It would become, I guess, a little more like bread. So I was trying really hard not to touch it too much. Once the dough was ready, it was pretty much just dividing it up into portions. You wanted to make sure that you had about an equal amount for each donut, and again keeping it in a plastic wrap to make sure it doesn't get too dry.
Oh, man.
This was also the part where I was a lot stricter than usual when it came to like exact measurements, because I wanted my donuts to come out around the same size. Each individual donut ball, I wanted it to be around the same shape. So I actually measured every single thing, and it took a while, but I think it was worth it. I'm just using my chopstick to add a little bit of water to the dough to make sure it sticks to each other. Covering it with a damp towel again. And then it was pretty much just repeating the same process over and over again. This part definitely takes a lot of time. I tried to work faster, but it is definitely one of the more time-consuming desserts I've made. Once all the donuts were formed, that's when I could start deep frying them. And I had a thermometer to make sure that the oil was hot enough and not too hot, not too cold. And I also had my timer to make sure that I stayed on track. I don't usually deep fry stuff at home, but watching it turn that golden brown color when I flipped it was pretty rewarding. Isn't that so cute? I love these little cute mochi donuts. They're perfect for sharing later too. While the donuts were still hot, I wanted to make sure that I dipped them into the matcha frosting I made earlier. Then the frosting could have that beautiful shine. this matcha frosting is also just perfect for everything. Because I wanted it to be a slightly darker green, I actually went ahead and double dipped them, and I think it actually turns out looking better. Also tastes better if you like matcha that much. Once the matcha donuts were done, that's when I made my dalgona candy, which is pretty much just sugar and baking soda. I think I put a little too much baking soda because it started puffing up real fast.
Mm-hmm.
But this is a super satisfying shot. I love how this turned out because you get that beautiful caramel color that almost instantly hardens. My mistake though was that I let the candy sit in the pan and it ended up burning, so do not do that.
Mm-hmm.
Once the donuts were cooled down and the frosting was set, that's when I plated them up. They turned out looking so gorgeous. Maybe not the other side, but I was truly so obsessed with this dalgona candy one. You can see that the candy's already hardened, and when you break it, you hear that satisfying crack, and look at that beautiful inside. I had to make a drink to go with it, so I went with some dalgona candy milk tea, which is one of my favorite drinks right now, and that is a perfect afternoon tea. I really like how chewy these ended up being and how the flavors complemented it perfectly. I hope you guys enjoyed this, and I will see you guys next time. Bye!
Hey guys, today we're going to be taking a look at DIY air conditioning. We're going to be putting to the test a design made popular by the household hacker, and then we're going to see if we can tweak that design just a little bit to make it a little more effective. One of the things I like best about the household hacker's air conditioner is how quickly it goes together. You can make the whole thing in just a few minutes. As the household hacker's design showed, we've got a styrofoam cooler and a fan that we had lying around the house, or one that we had to pick up at Walmart because we don't have many fans. His original design showed using 2 dryer vents, angling the air out of the cooler to wherever we wanted it to point. However, I couldn't find those for the low price he said he found his, so instead I've got 2 2-inch PVC elbows. These should work pretty much the same way, allowing our air to be angled up and out, and letting us choose where to point it. Here's the basic idea. We'll build the air conditioner with the fan and 2 elbows, following the design given to us by Household Hacker. We'll then see if we can improve on the design using cube dice and a few methods to try and improve the circulation within the container. To get started, let's get our fan prepped and ready to go on our cooler. We want to remove this front grill and this base clip as well, so we just have the fan by itself. And we'll have the blades exposed, which will let us put the fan closer down onto the cooler without losing any air off the sides. With our fan prepped, it's time to cut a hole in our lid that will let the air flow into our cooler. The lids on this particular styrofoam container are not quite as flat as the one he was using, but it should work pretty well anyway. We want to cut a hole that's just barely bigger than our fan blades. You can see that on this cooler, that's going to involve cutting down into the sloped portion of the lid. I'm pretty sure it's still going to work. Got that circle traced, let's cut it out with a razor blade. If we've measured this correctly, we should be able to place our fan onto our lid, turn it on, and not have the blades hit any of the sides of the container. Hey, I think we did it. I think we've also invented a super cheap hovercraft. Which only works if you're actively blowing a fan into it by holding the fan above it. We now need to cut 2 holes for our PVC elbows. And those are going to go on the sides of the center hole.
Oh boy.
Because of the slope, I think it is going to be just a little bit tricky to get our hole cut to the perfect shape, but I'm not too worried. It's just going to take a little bit of trial and error. That's a pretty good fit right there. Tube is coming up out of the inside of the box, pointing at a 90-degree angle, and if we want to change the direction that it points in, it spins quite easily. Let's do the same thing on the other side. We've got all the holes we need for both the fan and the elbows. We should now be able to put this lid onto our container, place the fan on top with some cooling elements inside, and get some nice cold air-conditioned air flowing out. In the Household Hackers video, he used frozen water bottles as the source of the cold air. So let's load up 7 of them into our cooler, put the lid and the fan on, and see what kind of cooled air we can get blowing out of the elbows. We've got airflow. I attached these little strips of plastic on there, not because they are important to the function, but just because they show when the fan is on or off. Although there's enough static electricity on this styrofoam that they still like to just